everybody, and welcome to Star Wars Culture. My name is Hannah.
And I'm Chad. The originals, prequels, and sequels from all ages, races, cultures, and wow, there was a lot written down for Jordan to say here. We have come to love Star Wars from everywhere. So today we're going to be talking about the differences between Star Wars fans from the past to now to modern throughout the years.
It's going to be a good time. And yeah, like Chad mentioned, Jordan's not here yet. He is running late from his day job, so he will be joining us very shortly. So we look forward to that. But for now, Chad, thank you for standing in for Jordan. Appreciate it.
No problem.
But there's we have a fantastic guest with us today. So we're going to have a fantastic conversation about these generational fans of Star Wars. And to join us for this conversation, we have Star Wars fan veteran Mark Newbold joining us today. Mark, how you doing?
I'm very well. Thanks for inviting me up.
Oh, it's going to be a good time and a good conversation.
Yeah.
Well, it's more of an evening show. I said, good evening more rather to you, Mark.
It's a late night show.
Yeah, the bats are out.
Yeah. That's it. Oh, fantastic. And if you enjoy what we do here at Star Wars Culture, be sure to check out all our social media platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram at SW Culture Pod. And then you can also follow CultureSlate on all your other favorite social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all at CultureSlate for all that rest of that pop culture goodness that you love. Patreon. Chad, where can people find us on Patreon?
Yeah, and then you can check us out at CultureSlate's Patreon at patreon.com/CultureSlate. We do some cool things there. We'll be posting more up there. It's going to be fun.
It's awesome. Alrighty. Well, before we get into this very interesting conversation we're going to have about the generational differences of Star Wars fans, we had some interesting news and a new trailer released, a Star Wars trailer released for us this week, which was very exciting, of the new Star Wars Visions show, which is coming to screens in September 22nd, I believe, if I'm not wrong, which is going to be super exciting. But we got our first full trailer, which looked fantastic, might I first say. So we're just going to have a quick discussion roundtable of what our initial thoughts and reactions were to this trailer. Mine were just, it looks really good. Mark, I'm going to throw it to you first, put you in the deep end. What was your first reactions to this Visions trailer?
Well, I was kind of surprised because, as we said before we started, Star Wars has got that Japanese influence in its DNA anyway. But I never really expected them to be so literally on the nose. This is Japanese anime, does Star Wars completely in that Japanese style. And obviously when you see the trailer, I think there's 9 different episodes. So I think we're kind of expecting 9 different styles. And that really highlights and shows up in the trailer. So you've got your full-on action stuff, very kinetic, very visual, your very sort of cutesy styles. There's a real mishmash. I'm not an anime expert, so I know there's specific names for specific
all the things.
I'm going to learn it because we're going to all get into it. I'm definitely going to learn it, but I'm hyper excited. Like I say, Dark Horse did the manga comics years ago. I never thought they'd go animation, so this is a real bonus.
Yeah, and you got a really good point there of like there's a lot of the lightsaber fighting style, for example, that draws from that real samurai style, and even George's film style. There was a lot of kind of that samurai Japanese war film kind of he drew upon. So it's kind of interesting. He took from that, and then now we're going back to there. We're going back into those roots. Chad, what about you? What did you think of that Visions trailer?
I'm super excited for this. Like I was kind of excited for it. I wasn't like crazy. I'm not a big like anime fan, so I wasn't like crazy excited for it. But after that trailer, I was like, oh man, all the different art styles, everything is just like, it looks so awesome. I can't wait. I like the idea of like having the lightsaber as like a katana almost. Like there was that quick shot of that one dude just like pulling it out on the side, and I was like, oh, that is like cool. And then there was like the umbrella lightsaber, which was
the umbrella lightsaber. Can we talk about that? Oh wow! Like I thought, Kylo Ren's lightsaber was like kind of branching out into different looks, but it's an umbrella, but it looks fantastic. Very strange, but I like it. That's a good point. It's a good point. what else was like the standout for you guys in this trailer? What else did you kind of what else caught your eye while watching?
There's one of the stories is spinning up into a novel, isn't it? They're doing a Visions novel.
Yes.
And there was that very classically anime style bad guy looking, I'm guessing he's a Sith. That guy always had that evil grin on his face.
Yeah.
He stuck out to me. So I'm not sure what episode he's from, but that was the one that leapt out at me. So that's the one I'm hyper curious about seeing.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And like, because we have these, really major, dark Sith characters that are very iconic and big in the Star Wars world. But it's going to be more interesting to start learning about these, kind of middle level evil, antagonist characters, not just the big Darth Vader, but the interesting evil characters that are there to cause that villainy and to cause that, the good and evil story to carry on. So it's going to be, I hope they do kind of go into different types of evil characters in these stories, and kind of, explore that a little more.
I know like all of this is not like canon. It's not the canon stuff. So it's gonna like bring in different aspects, and then like I kind of like that idea that it doesn't have to like play in the Star Wars universe. It uses the Star Wars universe as like a jumping board to do different wacky
it's like
things.
It's like a playground, a Star Wars playground.
Exactly, that's the word.
It's like Love, Death and Robots on Netflix, isn't it? Where every episode's its own thing and very different. And I don't know whether any of the interchange or mix, or whether they're all completely standard, because there's a Fett episode and there's all this other stuff. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if one of these really sticks to the landing with people and people want to see more of it. So in time we go, oh well, you had Visions before, well here's season 2 of Visions, but also you're going to get this. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of this spun off into its own thing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because when I was thinking about when Mando came to our TV screens and when that was released as Star Wars can be a live action TV show, like I don't know about you guys, but I just remember there was a lot of not necessarily negative, but there was some skepticism of like, is that really going to work, Star Wars on a TV show? And then like look at the absolute reception it's gotten, and with season 2 being even bigger and everyone just going wild for Mandalorian and Baby Yoda being the biggest like pop culture character of the past 2 years. Like I'm hoping, I think it'll be in a different way, but I'm hoping that Visions gets the same reception, because I think you mentioned this before, Chatter. I'm a bit on with what you're saying of like, I'm not big into anime. I haven't seen a lot of anime, but I'm very open to the idea of it. So I'm hoping Visions kind of can achieve that next step of branching out into this new style, kind of this new look of Star Wars, which is going to be really interesting. Yeah.
I think other ways of presenting Star Wars as well, it never hurts to do it in a different way. Like you say, back in the 80s, it was Ewoks and droids, and that was different from the time. After all the live action, and then you have a TV movie with Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor, or cinema. We got them in the cinema in the UK, but and then years later when you get CG with animated Clone Wars, Tartakovsky Clone Wars, and then you get CG Clone Wars. You know what I mean? And so it's always trying something new. But this really is a departure. This is as much of a departure as Star Wars performed by dogs and cats. It's something that you wouldn't expect. It's so out of the box. So now everyone's mega excited, but I think more than that, really curious to see how this is going to work. I'm in that camp of just it's just curiosity. That's the best word to describe it. I think it's just how the stories are going to run, even just like the storylines, how deep they're going to be, how similar they're going to be to stories we've seen before. Is it going to be the simple, kind of story of good and evil and the grey in between, or are we going to see kind of new ventures kind of branch out from there? Let's take a look in the comments. Chad, what are some comments that people are saying?
Seriously, Star Wars here said the Sith with multiple lightsabers looks pretty cool. Yeah, exactly.
It's like I think they've got like 6 arms with 6 red lightsabers. That looked like I saw a meme that General Grievous is going to be very jealous. Yeah, I agree. Like that looks really cool. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Star Wars Visions is such a great opportunity to diversify the Star Wars universe. Yeah, that's the word that comes to mind. Hey, it's the diversity of style and how we're kind of consuming it, different types of media, which is interesting. Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, any final thoughts on the Visions trailer that we got? Mike, what are you looking forward to most about this?
September coming around quickly, and I don't like to rip my life away because that's not a cool thing to do. But I mean, we've just had 16 awesome weeks of Bad Batch. We've got to wait a couple of weeks for Disney Gallery, and then it's not that long until, as you say, until Vision starts, because we've had a blast on Fantha Tracks reviewing all this stuff, and it generates conversation, so it's always interesting. Plus, it's new Star Wars content, so that's the big thing for me. We've got some brand new Star Wars content coming, so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Chad, what about you? What are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to just like sitting down and just watching all these and just like enjoying it, like something the different art styles and something new. It's always new. Star Wars is always fun, and the Bad Batch was great. Can't wait for the second season. Now, something to hold us over until Book of Boba Fett comes out in December. It's just like,
that's it. Yeah, it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan, and I feel like I've been saying that for the past like 3 years. But they're really spoiling us. I feel there's different animations, different shows coming out, different books coming out. It is a good time to be a Star Wars fan. Really, really good. Okay, with that, that's Visions. It's going to be a good time. We can't wait for it. But on to the rest of the show today, we are going to have a bit of a deep dive, a bit of a conversation about the differences of Star Wars fans and through the generations, and what that looks like, and what we kind of our perspectives on that. Now, of course, we were just saying before the show, Star Wars has been out for 45 or 44, but kind of 45 years, if we're being precise. Which is a long time for something to stick around, especially just starting off with a little low budget kind of independent movie to becoming the massive conglomerate of ideas that Star Wars is today. So let's talk a little bit about when Star Wars first coming out, 1997, coming through the early 80s, and the kind of what was happening around that time and how it was received. So talking about the original trilogy era, let's talk about our perspectives on how they were received and how did it change a generation, and did it? So, Mark, I'm enjoying throwing you in the deep end today. I'm going to just throw it right at you first thing. So tell me from from your perspective, how do you think, Star Wars kind of impacted this time period and that generation of those early 80s and people around watching those movies?
The only thing I can compare it to whenever I talk about Star Wars coming out is, imagine it's 1963 and the first Beatles record comes out and no one's ever done anything like it, and the whole world flips for it because everybody loves it. It's the only thing in pop culture that came along that was as big as the Beatles. And so Star Wars comes out, and this sci-fi of the time, people were still talking about 2001. 2001 was like 8 years before Star Wars. People still talked about King Kong. That was 40 years before Star Wars. Sci-fi had its period in the television series in the 40s and cinema, and then, big budget in the 50s. And then it kind of tailed off a little bit. Symphonic scores had tailed off. Visual effects just weren't what ILM would take it to. I'm from the UK, so we had Doctor Who. You could literally poke your fingers in the wall and set on. So it was generally sci-fi was cheap as chips, and so Star Wars comes along, and to every measurable degree turned up the dial. Nobody had seen anything like it. The visuals, as I say, the music, the performances, just everything. You were literally immersed in a world. So you go from Saturday night hiding behind the sofa watching Space 1999 or Doctor Who, or Planet of the Apes, or $6 Million Man, or whatever, and then all of a sudden Star Wars arrives, and it was just it's incalculable, and it won't happen again. It's the same with music. You'll never have another Beatles because nobody will be able to, because music's diversified so much and cinema is diversified so much. nothing will have that impact again. So when Star Wars came out, it really, I mean, we got it in the UK. It came out in 77, December 27th, 77, but we didn't really get it till early 78. So we were kind of a year behind the States, which meant we only had about 2 years for Empire. So not everything's bad, but it was just insane how quickly it took hold. I mean, I was 6 when Star Wars came out. So kids were talking about it in the playground, and the toys took forever to come. The comic, as you just mentioned, the comic came along. We got that a little bit later as a weekly, but it just took over everything. And it started the summer blockbuster. Everyone says Jaws started it, but I couldn't go and see Jaws when I was 6. It was a film that was accessible to everybody, and I think really when I think on it now, I think it was the Oscars, the 78 Oscars, when it did so well, the 50th Academy Awards, and I think it won 6 or 7 Oscars, especially special achievement Oscar and such. That really was the stamp of, well, this isn't just some silly, childish sci-fi cost, $10 million or whatever, which was still a decent amount. But as you say, Lucasfilm was that independent company, Fox were the distributors.
Yeah.
But, Cleopatra cost 30 million in the 60s, so it was small budget for what ended up on screen. It really is hard to quantify, especially now, what a massive impact that film made.
Yeah, no, and some fantastic points, and I love how you can even remember talking about it in the playground. That's so fascinating. Just talking about from that period, like, can you think back to thinking how weird it was seeing a walking carpet, a walking Bigfoot on a screen? Like, was all those kind of things that like we take for granted now, but being born in an era where Star Wars already existed, that it almost wasn't a odd concept to me. But seeing it first time on a screen and then people talking about it, was that a really weird kind of, there was some strange elements, and going, Darth Vader, this big, black masked, machine. Like, what were all these elements like for you to experience?
Well, the thing is now.
Can I interject real fast? But before we do that, Jordan is here.
Oh, we have Jordan. Oh, brilliant. Jordan, welcome. Barely.
I'm here.
You are joining a great discussion right now. We're into talking about, Star Wars coming out in the late 70s and when it first came out. So you've joined at a really good time.
Love that for me.
Oh, phenomenal. Okay, we were just about to hear from Mark talking about the amazing and weird elements of Star Wars that came out and how he reacted. So, Mark, take it away. Yeah, so what was your first thoughts of seeing those odd things?
Because we'd never seen anything remotely like it, because, as I say, television back in the mid-70s, an exotic-looking monster was a mop head with a snooker ball in the middle, and that was it. There was nothing particularly, technical about it, to that degree anyway. And then Star Wars comes along and everything looks so real. And of course, it's a cliche now, it's so lived in. 2000 looks like every scene they filmed, it had been mopped and burnt, brushed down. And Star Trek was very different, but Star Wars looked like, Luke walks into the homestead and he's kicking sand around everywhere, and it's messy and a bit, you know what I mean? It just had the scuffed on it, which really attracted people, even kids. Like, we noticed it as kids. And the saying about the playground, you just mentioned about talking about the playground. Now, if you're born in the last, I don't know, since Heir to the Empire, Dark Empire, 91, that sort of era, Star Wars, to me anyway, has been pretty much consistently at a very high level ever since then. And obviously you got your sequel trilogy, you got your prequel trilogy and then your sequel trilogy, and it's right up there in the zeitgeist. But Star Wars has never dropped out of that for like I say 40 odd years. But when it came along, then there was no internet. You got one comic a week. The toys took a year. There were so many things that now you don't even think about it. There's going to be 2 or 3 comics come out every Wednesday from Marvel, and Hasbro will make an announcement on StarWars.com every week, and there's constant flow of stuff. Then it was so rare to get stuff. So like you say, when you see Chewie turn up on the screen, everybody wanted that Chewie figure. He was the Greedo, any of those guys, the original 12, any of those characters, as soon as they came, they were gone in a heartbeat. I think my first figure was Death Star droid, and I think back, I know why I got Death Star droid because I thought it was 6 years ago. So it's just how it works.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And as we talk about this, I was just thinking about even that opening couple of shots of the cantina bar, and they do that fantastic pan and like these just interesting shots of 2-3 aliens in each shot and kind of just show who's in the bar like that. I mean, even for me watching that for the first time, even understanding that, Star Wars is all aliens and new, it's just every shot you go, oh, they look weird. Like it was very interesting. And I think, in that same vein of what you're saying, it was just such interesting depth into like the style, the art, the sets, and the aliens. So it would have been such a jarring thing to see in a good way. Jordan, I want to know your thoughts on this. Yes, we're talking about Star Wars, coming out in that period, and obviously we weren't around for that. We weren't in that period. But what do you think when you watch like the original trilogy and think back to how it came out?
I don't know. I don't think about it too hard. Is that weird? Because I wasn't born yet. I'm only like 26 years old. But it's definitely interesting to hear people who were like around, I guess. I don't want to say old because that's disrespectful.
I don't mind.
It's definitely interesting to hear other people's perspectives of like how their lives were changed when Star Wars came out. Because like my dad was like, I was like 13 or something like that. I don't know. He's an old man. And he was like, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And I'm like, and then, watching it, of course, loving it. I'm like, really? You've never seen anything like it? But then I have to understand that I have like all these other movies to go off of and they didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you there I can see how the Star Wars, the original trilogy has impacted the years on. So if you look at the blockbuster films that followed in the immediate like 5-10 years, it definitely kind of what's the word I'm going for? It like trampolined the next kind of wave of movies to come out to be kind of out there and blockbuster and try new things. And even a lot of the space stories became popular again. And I think like what you were saying, Mark, is that it can that kind of alien odyssey space sci-fi had kind of died down just a bit. Is that right to say? Just before Star Wars came out?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it had tailed off. I'd say sci-fi in that to that degree, to that level, had tailed off. I think the 70s. You got to remember as well. You'd had Vietnam, you'd had Watergate, you'd had all. You had 3-day weeks. You had brownouts and blackouts. It was a pretty grim time. The chase for the moon had kind of finished in 73, so there was no aspiration. The 70s was not a particularly colourful. You think of the 60s and 50s and 60s in the UK being kind of grey and drab. The 70s was really grey and drab. And so Star Wars comes along. I mean, I think it's no coincidence that Star Wars and disco basically took off at the same time, because once you get to sort of 76, 77, it feels like we're getting a bit of our mojo back, and the rest of the 70s had a lot more vim and vigor about it. And you get to as I say, you just mentioned the blockbuster era. Spielberg's coming up at the same time. He's hit with Jaws rather than Lucas has Star Wars, and then Close Encounters is a massive hit the same year as Star Wars. And there's a couple of wobbles along the way. American Graffiti 2, 1941. But then once you get to 1980, Empire, Raiders, E.T., you're off to the races. And that whole Spielberg Lucas era of the 80s was just something else. And really it did come to a huge degree from Star Wars, because John Williams, he'd already won Oscars before he did Star Wars, for goodness sake. I think he won 2 or 3 Oscars before he even did Star Wars. But that really established him as the guy right up there with Goldsmith and those people. ILM had come out of nowhere, and then they're the premier effects team for the next sort of 20 years. It was just really was next level stuff.
Yeah. And if we start to kind of flow on from that timeline, like we're talking about, because we had, can't calculate, 15 years before the ideas and the kind of the movement for the prequel movies to start coming up, started to begin. So if we keep moving along that pattern and we arrive at the prequels, which was, so I think, Jordan, you were I can't do that maths. You were alive for the prequels. You were around for the prequels.
Yes,
I was kind of born right at Phantom Menace period.
Yeah.
So kind of us being born in that period. Because there was a lot of like, why did you wait so long, and why did it kind of take so long to get into this next part of the story, to continue Star Wars? It was so successful. It took a while, but in kind of thinking about it in a long-term perspective, it's like, well, it did make these different generations. It did actually kind of make Star Wars sustain for longer, because we've got literally the kids, are being born from the original trilogy fans into this new trilogy of new for new fans, which is very satisfying for us, being born in it. But let's talk a little bit about the reception of the prequel movies, because this is where, in my opinion, Star Wars gets that rap of being can be quite a negative fandom and have those divisive ideas and kind of start to really not like certain characters, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, Jordan, I'm going to throw this to you because I've put Mark in the deep end too many times today. Jordan, I'll go with you first. Prequels coming out, whenever you first saw them, how did you receive them?
I love them. They were just amazing to me. I saw Revenge of the Sith first, so it was kind of jarring to watch the last movie and wait, what the actual hell is happening? But that was sort of my experience. I was like confused, but also thoroughly impressed, and I was like, wait, I need to go back and watch everything else because this is amazing. My favorite thing to say about sequel movies is everyone loves to hate them until it's time to talk about the sequel trilogy. So,
do you mean the prequels? Your favorite thing to say about the prequels?
Yes, my favorite thing to say about the prequels is everyone loves to hate them until it's time to talk about the sequels. That's
a good point. That's a really good point. So, that's such a and it's that thing of.
I was just going to say, the reason I say that is because everyone loves to talk about how much they hate Jar Jar Binks and how cringy Padme's lines were and how cringy young Anakin was and blah, blah, blah. But then those same people turn around and are like, I hate Rey. Anakin was pretty great and so was Jar Jar. It's like, okay, guys, calm down. Yeah,
it's just like a cycle. And if we talk about like specifically what the prequel movies did to that era, if we think about like watching all the behind the scenes and the making of those prequel movies, green screens coming in, and that the kind of boom in technology coming out, and George using that so generously, that started like a whole new wave of the use of green screens and how that was utilized in those movies. So I think. Going from a big jump from the 80s up until 99 when Phantom came out, like it kind of needed that time for technologies to kind of speed up for what George wanted to put on our screens.
Definitely.
Mark, what do you think about this? When the prequels came out, how do you think it impacted the existing Star Wars fans and then to bring in the new Star Wars fans?
How long have you got? That's a big question.
We have 30 minutes. No kidding.
When I think when Lucas started working on Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and they started testing like the digital backlot and how cheap, because it's still an independent company at that time, how cheaply can they make a quality TV show? So that Rick McCullum said it before, that was a real testing ground for what came in Phantom, but that was still 6 or 7 years before Phantom Menace. And famously, George seeing this CGI T-Rex from Jurassic was the moment when he realized, actually we can do this now, because early 90s, The Abyss in 89, Terminator 2 in 91, all those massive leaps, they did away with I think the last optical thing they did was Always, I think, back in '88 for Spielberg. So after that, digital with sort of Hook going forward. So there's massive changes going on there. The creature shop's gone. Lots of things have changed. It's not until he gets to sort of 94, he sits down in his office and writes, episode 1, the beginning, and starts working out the storyline, which of course he'd already got notes going back to the 70s. He'd already worked out stuff, that's a very good point from Dominic. They literally have practical effects on the OT, CGI now. Yeah, stagecraft. That's a really good point. But Lucas had to reinvent the wheel to do the prequel because he knew he couldn't have made it in the optical era. It wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. He was building the company. LucasArts, all the stuff he was working on at that point of time, the ranch, it had just become his priority. So when he gets to 98 and, they filmed it in 97, the trailer comes out in 98. The reaction was, I think, because if you look at the 90s, you could argue that Star Trek owned the 90s with the golden era of Star Trek. With all the stuff that was going on. The movies was doing great business. So Star Trek really was the powerhouse in the 90s. There was that Star Wars versus Star Trek thing that had been going on since day one because people, you can look at both. But when Star 1 came out, it was so different. I think that was the problem more than anything. It was so different. He wasn't remaking Star Wars. He knew he wasn't going to find another Mark, Carrie, and Harrison. They wanted a generation kind of team of actors. That's not going to happen again. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to remake it. He wanted to do something different. So episode 1 came. I'll admit, I went to Vegas to see it and sat down with my best mate. We went 2-week tour, driving around California, had a great time. Sat in the cinema, and we'd seen The Matrix about 3 days before, which absolutely threw ourselves off. We were not what we saw with The Matrix. And then we saw episode 1 and we walked out. It's like 2 a.m. or whatever it was, walking down the strip back to the hotel. And I just looked at my mate and went, what the was that? Like, what was that? I did not get it.
Yeah.
And thankfully, in the UK till the July. This was May 19th. So we saw it again, I think 6 more times, something crazy like that. Before we were going to see it again for months. And the second time I was like, actually now I'm starting to get this now.
Yeah.
We were like the biggest cheerleaders ever for Phantom Menace, which is the one film I think improves with age. I think Phantom gets better and better and better over time.
Yes, I completely agree with you there. I think when you think of Star Wars and especially original trilogy Star Wars, and then you make that jump to Phantom, it can have that kind of jarring effect because it's just such a different feel of a storyline, and we're traveling to so many different worlds quite quickly within one movie. So that kind of the expanse of it was kind of overwhelming in a small way.
As well.
Yeah. It was just one thing after another. Achieve this, go here, that kind of thing. But I'm with you there that I think it's gotten better over age. I think. Even in my time, watching it as a kid and thinking, this is a great movie, and then watching it now, I get so thrilled to watch Phantom Menace again. I just think I find it really funny. I don't know if it was, intention, we have that kind of slapstick comedy of Star Wars, but I find it so funny. And I think it's, we have to kind of look at the movies like we're not critiques of it, to really kind of fully enjoy a movie. We're there we can have our opinions, but we're not there to, be the expert movie critic, which I think a lot of fans think they are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, but a lot of fans think they are. Oh no.
Very true.
Yeah. So now let's talk about this next jump of the next 20 years and the next 15 years, because I know there was a couple of books and some comics, and there's a bit of content between Return of the Jedi to Phantom Menace, but in comparison of Revenge of the Sith to the sequel trilogy, we have a whole bunch of content. We have so much variety in Star Wars media, and it was that's the boom of where Star Wars diversified into interestingly the first Clone Wars animated movie not doing that well, and then obviously the series of the Clone Wars doing exceedingly well in the early 10s and 2010s, which was interesting. Mark's reaction to Phantom Menace was basically my reaction to The Last Jedi. So that's good. That's good. But yeah, talking about this period in between, what was kind of what kind of changed, and how did this impact the fandom? Because we talked about how the prequels, weren't necessarily positively received. So how do we think that the animated series and this boom of kind of Star Wars novels and books, how did that impact this generation?
I think after Heir to the Empire, after Dark Empire, which was obviously a comic, that got Star Wars fans used to reading again, because when Star Wars came out, you got the original novel in November 76 or December 76. Then you had Splinters, which nobody's supposed to talk about anymore, and the Han Solo trilogy, which is still my favorite 3 books. Yeah, the Lando trilogy, the novelizations, and that was it until Heir to the Empire, and then that comes out and it's just tremendously successful. So Star Wars fans have got into the rhythm of getting a book every couple of 3 months, and that really did hype up big time for the prequels, because the one thing the prequels did really, really well was Bantam and then Del Rey by the prequel era, and Dark Horse was so on it with content for the prequel trilogy. So, and of course, we had a 3-year gap, which is something I really miss. I wish these sequel trilogy films had a 3-year gap, because it gave the reader and the watcher the time to really digest the film. You had time to extrapolate stuff. Kenner had time, Hasbro had time to release figures. There was really time for that film to have its moment in the spotlight. The one criticism of the current films is that a film's here and gone, out on Disney Plus, and it's gone and in the back rearview mirror way too quickly. The prequel really got it right. So I think even the people who weren't massively inspired or enthused by the films, I think most fans really warmed to Revenge of the Sith. I love Attack of the Clones, and that's the one film more than any of them. And I'm like, no, I could happily watch that film any time of the day. And I've already said how much I love Phantom Menace, so I really dug it. But I like the history and all the what's going on screen and the history of all of that. But I think when you get past Sith, it was the circle is now complete. They were handing out the wristbands at Celebration, going, the circle is now complete. This is it, guys. You've got your 6 films that George Conrad. That's it. So even though we've been dreaming of Episode 7 back in '83 when Jedi finishes with the big celebration. Are we ever going to see these guys again? We never really thought we were going to get it. We knew we were going to get 1, 2, and 3. That they were being talked about from the early '90s onwards, and fake fan scripts, Fall of the Republic, and all this stuff were coming out. So we kind of knew it was coming. But once you get to the end of Sith, we're like, okay, that's it. And then they announced the Clone Wars series, CG series. We didn't know we were getting a film initially. That kind of came a little bit after they'd announced the series, and they sort of changed a little bit. I mean, for me, I was just thrilled we were getting more Star Wars, but I didn't ever expect what has happened to happen. So it was a good time. It was definitely a good time to be a fan. The fandom, you asked about the fandom, really. I mean, the fandom was busy. We didn't have, it was pre-social medias, it's pre-Twitter and Facebook, which was a really great place to be, because you go to StarWars.com, you go on the old official blogs, which was huge. Yeah, you were only talking to Star Wars fans who gave a crap and wanted to be there. So your opinion might not jive with their opinion, but generally, I mean, there were some idiots, but generally, people generally. So the 3 of us could have a completely different opinion, but we'd all explain why we think what we think. And it was all gravy. It was all good. That's kind of lost a little bit nowadays, but it was a good time to be a fan back then. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. And I know, because you and I, Jordan, I think you've experienced it more than me, but that kind of abrasive fan culture that has slowly cultivated over time.
That can be a whole episode in and of itself. It's all the BS Jordan deals with for saying he likes the movie.
It's just fascinating that that point you make of we've lost that charm of having those different opinions of like, oh, I think this Jedi's better, and no, this Jedi's better. But then talking about it and saying what are the best things and having that discussion, like that's the charm of Star Wars fans connecting. But now it's like a personal thing. It's like, oh, you don't like that character? Well, it's a very personal thing.
Back then, that's such a good point, because one of the great things that used to happen back then on the blogs was that, let's say I put an opinion out there. I've thought of something on blah, 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 and I blurt it out and put it out there. And then somebody might come up with a point and go, well, actually, and 9 times out of 10, you'd go, you've kind of changed my mind on this. Actually, I think that was and that's how you learn, isn't it? It was a really sweet way of conversing. Plus, it made loads of friends back then. We've pitched a panel for Celebration, basically talking about the old blog, because it was such a cool place to be, and loads of those guys still keep in touch. Now, as like Jordan just said, and you've just said, you put something out there, if people don't like it, wow, are you flamed? Good grief.
Yeah.
That's one F word you could use.
So it's a very different world now. Very different world.
Yeah.
Very different world. Yeah. Jordan, what do you think of this kind of period? Because this is kind of the time where we were, teenagers coming into the Clone Wars, and watching Clone Wars and having all this content around us. Tell us about that period for you.
So to be a teenager watching the Clone Wars was to be someone who didn't get on the internet. Love that for me, because I just thought that we were all vibing, and I would talk to my friends in my immediate vicinity about the show and what they loved about it. I have a friend to this day we still talk about. I've known him since like the 7th grade, and we're both like 25 and 26. And we just talk about it and love it. It wasn't until I was able to like get on Tumblr and Facebook and Twitter and realized, oh, okay.
Not everyone loves this. Yeah. No, that's a really interesting point too. Of when you're not in those areas, like you just think everyone's like enjoying this and having a good time with it.
It's just, and I feel like that's just like a small scale of what the fandom deals with, like in general, because a lot of people who love Star Wars and aren't really on the internet, they make TikToks and put their opinions out there, and now they're being called every slur in the book. It's not fun. And it's just like, it's a jarring experience. But with the bad comes the good, because while y'all are talking all that mess, I'm enjoying everything I can and focusing what I like. And I think that's also a key difference in like fandom culture, is a lot of people in our universe, in the Marvel universe and stuff like that, a lot of people focus on what they don't like. Like you see Star Wars fans talking about Rey more than any other Rey fan that I've known in my life. They talk about how much they hate her more than I hear people talk about how much they love her, or this, that, and the other. I hear people always talk about how they forced diversity into Star Wars, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, go talk about the original trilogy or something and leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like, just go talk about the same three. Go talk about Luke, Leia, and Han for the 85th time, and leave me alone.
Yeah, it's interesting how people, we have those people in the fandom that want to draw to those negativities, and it's they almost kind of look for, okay, what is the big fat in this movie that I can wreck on and crap on. So it's those outliers. But like what you said, I like what you mentioned before, is there with the bad comes the good, and we have those positives of like how connecting this fandom can be, and how it literally can so easily connect people that are so different and diverse, but we can all kind of bond over this, this kind of childish love, I want to call it, for Star Wars.
It's not childish.
It's not childish, but it's like that,
they're not toys, they're collectible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's so good. Because where else would the three of us ever get together to talk? We're on different corners of the planet. We're all different ages. So, it's a unifying thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the magic of Star Wars.
You know what's also funny, and I like hate to like keep ragging on the negative side of fandom, but it's like what I do. It's part of my personality.
It's there. It's there.
What the interesting part about people who are like, if you like this part of Star Wars, you blah blah blah, and like just say all this negative stuff. A lot of people always are like, oh, those are just the original trilogy apologists, those older fans. At it again. No, it's people my age acting like they're above it all because they don't like something that I like, and that they like something that George Lucas made and I like something he didn't. You know?
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Like, you know, oh, those are just the older fans coming for us new fans, and it's like, no, people talking shit about you. Part of my language are the same age as you. Some of them are younger. Also, I had a 12-year-old in my TikTok comments last week, and I was like, "Hey,
oh no,
you know, I'm gonna find your mom on Facebook, and I'm going to tell her that you won't leave people alone if you keep this up." So,
oh goodness, that's also the bad power of the internet. That's just that's far-reaching. Hey,
the age thing though, it's a good. You make a great point about the age thing because obviously there is. I mean, you know, I was there. The thing is, it's got to a point now. It almost feels like a weaponized comment to say I was there when the original film came out. It's just a fact that I was, you know, and I've loved it all the way through. But we mentioned the Bad Batch a moment ago, which is as fresh as you can get right now until Visions comes out. And me and my wife were up every Wednesday morning, 8:00. That's when it came on Disney Plus in the UK, 8:00 in the morning. Wow. I'm fairly flexible with work, so we'd sit there on Wednesday mornings, have our breakfast, watching Bad Batch, and absolutely
that's phenomenal.
That's amazing.
That is the warmest image.
Well, in my PJ. And I would have loved it 20 years ago, and I know I would have loved it 40 years ago. So that's when Star Wars sticks the landing. The age aspect is really kind of irrelevant. But I know plenty of people that hated the prequels and still do, just because they weren't the original trilogy. But preferred the sequel trilogy. I know some people that don't like the sequel trilogy but love the prequels. Yeah. I mean, for me, the OT is never going to get topped. I'm never going to have an experience like Empire Strikes Back again because I've seen too much and I'm 50 and I know too much and blah blah blah. So nothing knocked my socks off like that did. I know I accept that, and that will be on my tombstone. It probably is my favourite Star Wars film, but never.
Yeah,
I know that there's many moments that have been wow, right up there, you know.
Yeah,
that is why I don't. That's why I don't expect too much from the shows whenever they come out. You know, except for when I'm like, that was the best thing I've ever seen. But because I know, like, you know, for me, those blow me away moments were Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One and stuff like that. Because I was born at that weird age where it's like, sure, I had the prequels, but I really had the sequels in like the Disney era of Star Wars. So it was like, you know, I don't expect to be as wowed as I was when, spoiler alert, everyone died at the end of Rogue One. I don't expect to get blown away as much as I did, you know, when Finn picked up that lightsaber and stuff like that. And, you know, but I still love the shows all the same. And if I don't, I'm not going to spend 13 hours on TikTok talking about it.
Yeah, no, and that's a good, well said. Brandon, and like that's a really good point. We all have those like wow moments, and we all have different. See, even Dom's quoting you there.
Hey, that's just how I am.
That's good. Get that on a t-shirt. That's good.
I don't hate things except when I really hate them. So,
but you know, we all have those wow moments, and we all come from different contexts and perspectives, and our lives are so different. So we're all going to have different wow moments. But it's for that beautiful conversation of differences that can be really interesting and connect us, where it's not just, hey, we're all of the same mind, we all have the favorite movie, we all have the favorite character. It's about having all those differences. And I think Star Wars is such a good kind of medium for that, because it has so many differences and it has so many different feelings, different types of characters that different people can relate to. You know, that we can see we often have the discussion of representation, and we've done a lot of discussions on that, and there still needs to be more discussions of representation in Star Wars. But, we're seeing more of it, and we're seeing it come into the shows and the storylines. We can even talk about how we were talking about Visions before. That's kind of reaching a new audience and, reaching different parts of the world of styles and medias. So, yeah, it's about that diversity that can, because it's so different, it can bring us together. That's the thing I like about Star Wars. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And Star Wars, I mean, you go right back to that original film when you walk in the cantina, like you mentioned earlier, and there's that there's the astronaut next to the Wookiee, next to the big insect guy, next to the wolf, and
insect guy. I love
we're talking aliens, but the point being is that Star Wars by nature is a very diverse community, because you've got first contacts happening every day. There's 250,000 inhabited planets, or whatever, I'm picking a number, crazy amount of inhabited planets, all these species mingling with each other. So diversity, it probably isn't even in their thought process, because everybody's different anyway, so that's the lay of the land in the Star Wars galaxy. Here on Earth, wow, if we were built identical, but I had Star Trek did it best, didn't it? Star Trek's always been the great for the allegories and the comparison.
Star Trek. I'm just kidding. I'm so kidding.
No, sorry. But you know what I mean? Here on Earth, we'll find something to argue about if there's nothing to argue about. Because in the Star Wars galaxy, everybody is unique and different, and a lot of the things that we still as a society have to define, because as a society we've only been around 50,000 years or something like that. We're still figuring it all out, and we're smart enough to know better, but we're generally stupid. In Star Wars, they're thousands of generations past that, so they're the ideal. They're the ideal.
Yeah.
Even though they're always fighting because it's Star Wars, they're fighting. It's political differences. I want their land. I want this. I want the Sith to be better than the Jedi. Whatever. That's why they're fighting. It's not because one guy's this, one woman's that, one alien is this, or whatever. So it is something to pitch for. It'd be nice if we could.
Yeah, nice if we could. And on this conversation of we're seeing differences of kind of ideas and concepts coming into these sequel movies, similar to the prequels of how they were received. These sequel movies divided and also kind of unified a lot of fans, I think, in my opinion. There was a lot of differences that came into this movie, expectations and thoughts of what should happen and what didn't happen and what did happen. So let's talk about, I want to know how the sequel trilogy movies impacted the fandom for good or for bad, and what we think of that. And the first thing I want to say about this is that even with the negativity and even with the differences of how people, we didn't want to see Luke like a grumpy old man, and we those big talking
Get
points.
over it. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna stop.
People wanting to say those things that they didn't like or did like, and you're having a lot of negative opinions. I think it was actually really important for these movies to be exactly the way they are, because it kind of brought a lot of light into what is wrong with our fandom, and I hope, and I'm seeing a lot more of that conversation come up in Star Wars content creators going, hey, we actually, a lot of people are disagreeing in a negative way, in a violent way, and we need to start changing that. So it kind of brought in this wave of people going, hey, we can have differences and still love Star Wars. Hey, we can, not like a character for a certain reason, but still love Star Wars, and kind of to bring that positivity back into the fandom for it being so negative.
I have the two most perfect guests for if we ever want to deep dive into that from TikTok. They are these dads. They're such dads. And they spend their time on TikTok telling toxic Star Wars fans to calm it the F down.
There you go. Yeah,
it's great.
We need those people, and we need those kind of leveling kind of voices within this fandom going, hey, there's actually a lot. We just got 3 actually quite interesting, action-packed movies that had a lot of good storylines, a lot of good characters that were new to the screen. There's a lot of positives and fun and Star Warsiness. I want to call it Star Warsiness in these movies. Mark, I want to know your opinion on how the sequel trilogy was received, how you received it, and where do you think it's going to, how does it impact this fandom?
I think it was interesting when the Disney deal went through back in 2012. Obviously, that was a massive change because, only people on the inside knew that was coming, that George wanted to retire and there wasn't a natural successor in that sense within the family. So going to Disney made all the sense in the world because, he was there the second day Disneyland opened back in the 50s. Star Tours, ABC doing the indie series, lots of connections between Lucasfilm and Disney. So that made all the sense. And on the same press release, they announced, and we're doing 3 new films. Which was, which was way more important than
like, wait, what? What did you just say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when Force Awakens came out, I think that the anticipation, that's a better word, the anticipation for Force Awakens, the only thing I compare that to was the anticipation for Phantom Menace, which I still think was even higher, if that's possible, because that really was coming after the back of the Holy Trilogy, and we just had the special editions, and it was just insanely next level everything. It was on every news cover, everywhere. Force Awakens was not that, I would say, not that far off that, and delivered. I love The Force Awakens as a film. And clearly OT kid, so I couldn't wait to see Han, Luke, and Leia. And I saw Han, Luke, and Leia and Lando. I saw those guys again, so that ticked my boxes. And you mentioned Grumpy Luke. First time I saw Last Jedi, I was like, it didn't land for me at all. Another Phantom Menace. The more I saw it, the more I sort of appreciated it. It was nice timing. But I think with Force Awakens rather, I think JJ sat down with the crew and said, my hopes for this film is that you've just seen Return of the Jedi. You've gone out to get another tub of popcorn and get yourself another soda. You're sitting back down, and now you're going to watch The Force Awakens. It really did feel like it was the next film. Even though there's a 32-year gap, it felt like it was the next film. So I very much appreciated that. My big issue, and it's not a massive issue, but my big problem with the sequel trilogy was with the original trilogy, he had nothing to compare it to. So he literally could make it up as he went along, because who's to say, well, that's not right, because there's nothing to compare it to. The sequel, the prequel trilogy rather, he'd got those notes. He knew where he was going, because this is what leads you to the original trilogy. So in terms of plotting them out, the prequel trilogy was very well structured, because he knew he had to hit this beat. He knew he had to start the Clone Wars. He knew he had to, he knew he had to go to Mustafar and have the lava fight, and all the little, waypoints of that was fairly well determined. He's got to leave the kids with, Beru and Owen. He's got to leave Leia with Bail Organa. All these things. When you get the sequel trilogy, it still feels like they hadn't plotted it out, even to the point now where the comics are kind of, and even Bad Batch to a degree, it feels like they're trying to explain Exegol. Now that sounds like a criticism. It kind of isn't, because Star Wars has always left these gaps. They left a 3-year gap so we could have a Clone Wars animated series. They never went into any definition really about how Han and Chewie met, and we got Solo, which that film made me happier than anything since Return of the Jedi. So,
Solo was the best thing to happen to me ever.
ever.
Not to be dramatic or anything.
Well, I can't disagree with that. And Rogue One, take a line out the scroll up from Star Wars and make Rogue One out of it. So they leave these little back doors all around the storytelling. Like no other franchise can go into those holes and make quality content like Star Wars can. So I can't rag on it too much. That was my one criticism, that tonally those 3 films didn't. But then really, if you look at Star Wars, Empire and Jedi, we think of them as one film now. Certainly my generation do. It's a unit.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Different to Empire. Empire is so different to Jedi. Same as the sequel trilogy. So, the prequels are very consistent. They are definitely George that's a 6-hour film right there. It just topped up. But the other two trilogies are very unique.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and it's really interesting because your kind of stance on how those sequel trilogies were received, or like how you took them, is pretty much exactly how I see them as well. There was so much I enjoyed of it, but yeah, if I had to have a criticism, there was the slight inconsistencies of just where it was going. But even with that, we can still enjoy it and still love that Star Wars feel of it. Jordan, what do you think of this? I want to know your thoughts.
I think you already know my thoughts, but no, The Force Awakens is amazing. I am someone, I have said it on the show before, so I'll say it again. I am someone who will love and defend the sequel trilogy to my dying day. However, I have problems.
Yeah.
But a lot of people think those problems are specific to the sequel trilogy just because they were like the most recent movies to come out. That's not actually true at all. My problems with the Star Wars franchise are just like I said with the franchise, not just those 3 movies. And that what that boils down to is, the diversity. There's absolutely no way that Lando Calrissian and Mace Windu and Captain Punaka were the only 3 black people in the galaxy with tens of thousands of planets. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then you get the sequel trilogy and they're like, okay, well, here's 2 more. Like, stop.
Yeah, and it's that conversation of diversity and that more representation we need.
Yeah, definitely. And just writing those characters in a way that is beneficial to the communities they're trying to represent. Don't just have people in your movies that look like me, but you're not really going to do much. Finn had a great start in The Force Awakens. They marketed him with the Skywalker lightsaber, blah, blah, blah. And then in The Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, it was like, okay, well, he's just going to kind of do stuff. And it's like,
he did get lost in the mix, didn't he?
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And so, because would that be your one criticism of the movies?
I mean, honestly, yeah, everything else was great. Rey was great. Kylo Ren was great until the Rise of Skywalker. But no, Kylo Ren is my other gripe, I guess. My criticism. I was
gonna say gripe.
He just kind of was like, great in The Force Awakens, okay in The Last Jedi, and then at the end of the Rise of Skywalker, I just was like, okay, I get it.
What? Yeah, and I think it kind of comes back to that thing of the inconsistencies. It's just it kind of, if not trails off, but it just kind of skews as we get those 3 movies. And it kind of goes down this odd road for some characters.
I think the Rise of Skywalker, I think what they should have done was what they did with Deathly Hallows, Harry Potter, and they should have, I've got my Gryffindor top on, they should have made it a 2-parter. It should have been 2 films. There was so much to wrap up.
Yeah,
and so much to investigate.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah.
They could have done it. I really do feel they could have done it. I know they would have broken up the trilogy kind of thing, but there was so much to resolve. And they gave it a go. I mean, they really did give it a good go. It's a beautifully made film. There's no qualms with the quality of the film, performances, or any of that. But they just had too much to wrap up, and as a consequence, a lot of things felt rushed, and somehow Palpatine returned. It's like, no, I don't want the exposition, and I don't need the back, and I don't need a flashback. But it just, elements of it felt a little bit rushed, and it didn't help. I mean, as a business, what was it? Force Awakens makes 2.2 billion. Last Jedi makes 1.3.
Love that for them.
Crazy money. Rogue One.
Love it.
Monster hit. Yeah, Solo was the one.
I just love. I just love pulling up those numbers because I'm like, which 3 little movies y'all said didn't make Disney any money? Oh, okay. Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean,
People
Solo was a mistake because they shouldn't have released it in May, should they? I mean, May was always Star Wars month. Now it's Marvel.
I don't know.
Just-
I loved the December releases personally. It was like I was just getting out of school for Christmas break, had a cute little movie to watch before Christmas, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah. It was kind of it kind of those years where you knew there was going to be a blockbuster sequel movie coming at the end of the year was just thrilling. It was just you couldn't wait. You couldn't wait for it. So maybe that did impact.
Star Wars, isn't it? Disney's still learning with Star Wars. You know, it's not new now. It's 8 years on, but then they were still sort of trying to figure out where does Star Wars sit, because we've got Pixar and we've got our own films and we've got Marvel films, and where does Star Wars fit in this jigsaw? To which I say, we start with Star Wars and everything else fits around that. That's what.
That's it. Yeah. Absolutely, I agree with you there. Yeah, and like we're saying at the start of the show, we've got such an exciting time of Star Wars content. I never thought Star Wars would work as a show.
Content now,
but like exactly, like there's so much room for characters, especially sequel characters, to have more expanded stories in shows. And we're getting the Andor series on a Rogue One character that was introduced. Like there's all these pockets and characters that we can expand on, which is so exciting. It's such a good time.
Yeah. Definitely. It's gonna be so fun. I can't wait.
It's a good time, and like I said at the start, it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan. It's a good time.
It always is.
Oh yeah. Now, with that being said, that wraps up another beautiful episode of our beautiful show.
It's a great episode.
It's a great episode.
Great episode.
Star Wars culture. You already knew the name of it. Thank you, Mark, so much for being here. It was so great to talk to you, even though I was late. I would like to apologize for my tardiness. Is it tardy when you're late? Yeah. Haven't been to school in a while.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot. So
but you got here in the end, though.
Yes. Mark, can you tell us where we can find you on social media?
You can find me if you want to go to the site. You can go to Fanthatrack, so it's at Fanthatrack, so it's Bantha with an F, basically Fanthatrack. If you want to find me, it's prefect_timing, which is a Hitchhiker's reference. So
prefect timing.
So that's where you'll find me.
Phenomenal.
And be sure you guys hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you want to see more of us here on our YouTube page, and follow CultureSlate everywhere on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of it. MySpace. Maybe we're on MySpace.
MySpace.
We don't know.
Does that still exist? I don't know.
I typed it up the other day and it was still there. But yes, all of the social medias are at CultureSlate. We have new social media for the show, specifically at SW Culture Pod. I hope I got that right.
Yes, that is. They're on the screen. They're
yes,
there.
Awesome. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Probably gonna make a TikTok, to put all Star Wars content on, but we'll see what happens.
Get onto it.
Yes. Next week, pay attention because I'm only gonna say it once. Next week, we are going to go forward an hour, as we will be on the same day, but our new time is at 8 p.m. EST.
Yes, so that's going to be 10 a.m. in Australian Eastern Standard Time too. So yes, we're going just an hour forward, but it's the same day for the same conversations. And again, at patreon.com/CultureSlate for any extra pop culture goodness you want to find over there. You can find our faces over there as well for some behind the scenes stuff. And that's it for this week. Thank you again to Mark for joining us. And as always, may the force be with you.
Always.